welcome to In the Making, a series of conversations from North Bennett Street School where we connect with a range of new voices, fields, and perspectives. Before we get into our conversation, we want to thank the many supporters that make our programs possible, including the Massachusetts Cultural Council. Thanks for joining us, everyone. My name is Kristen Odell. I'm an NBSS staff member and host of In the Making. This sixth season of In the Making has and will focus entirely on crafting a business. Since January through to the next, which is the last program, we've been speaking with a range of NBSS alumni and community members to hear first-person accounts of what it's really like to start a business of the types we train you for here at NBSS. For this seventh episode in the series, we're joined by two craftspeople who have set up their own studio spaces and workshops from start to finish. Rebekah Lord Gardiner graduated from our bookbinding program in 1993, and with a partner set up a large print shop in Newton, Mass. Called Shepherd Maudsleigh Studio. Forgot the rest of the sentence. Sandy Weymouth right here graduated from the CFM program in 2018 and more recently set up a bench rental workspace in Weymouth, Mass. Is it reasonable for me to call it a bench rental workspace?
Yeah, I think we refer to it as a tenant shop.
There we go. Okay, a tenant shop in Weymouth, Mass, and it's stunning. Both of their shops are dialed in. Welcome to you both, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So let's start with the simplest question. How did each of you end up in your current shop or workspace situation?
Sure, I'll start. I started out thinking that I wanted to open a makerspace. It was 2012, 2013. I was really into 3D printing, digital fabrication. I had been to places like the Artisans Asylum, which at the time was in Somerville. I loved that whole model. I lived in the Southshore, and there really wasn't anything like that down there. And so I was like, this is what I want to do. And then I went to the 3-month furniture intensive here at North Bennett Street. My instructor was Jamie Pope, who now runs the CFM program. And he took me to his shop. He had a collaborative shop in West Concord, took me to see that, and I just fell in love with the whole concept. And as I continued with that class, I just fell in love with woodworking and said, this is what I want to do. And so I came back and did the full-time CFM program and graduated from that in 2018 and immediately started looking for shop space to open a shop. I had a home shop at the time, so I could continue to work, but I wanted something bigger. At the same time, I started buying machinery and just used stuff and putting it in a storage unit. And it took me a lot longer to find space than I was expecting. About a year and a half later, I found something. I was able to buy it. It was in pretty bad shape, so I knew I had to do a lot of renovations. I was very naive to all that, but I thought it would be not a big deal. And then 4 months later, COVID hit, and the whole thing just got shelved for an entire year. And I finally got back to it, found a contractor, and was able to get everything done 2022 and 2023, and so now it's up and running. So that's how I got into it.
And I straddle the worlds both of printmaking and craft. So I graduated from here in 1993, and I was thinking potentially I would be a design binder as well as a restoration binder. But my printmaking chops kept sort of biting back at me and saying, you got to get back into fine art. So fast forward to 2018, I ended up with a solo show at the Bromfield Gallery, which I was very pleased to be able to get. But I needed access to both etching presses and silkscreen equipment. And the only place that existed was here in the South End with Liz Shepherd at Shepherd Print Studio. So I rented from her because she had already established print studios for about 12 years by the time I met her. And halfway through my working with her, she found out that her landlord was not going to renew her lease. So I jumped in and said, hey, do you want some help finding a new space, and do you want a business partner? She said yes, and so here I am in 2026 as a business partner. So Liz Shepherd and I created an LLC. So we do have a members-based shop, and we have everything from screen printing, etching, wood relief, to cyanotype, fiber artists, book arts, which we brought in when we acquired the second part of our building. The previous tenant decided not to continue to rent in 2023. And we've expanded to now include paper making. So we somewhat are vertically integrated, because we're just about to open the door to using a Kelsey press for access to small letterpress printing capacity. But speaking to the COVID issue, so we started in 2018 at our space in West Newton, and we were, fully filled out, and we had tenants and workshops were running, and boom, then came COVID. And what has happened is we have this fabulous community, and they supported us through that and helped us support some of our tenants or some of our members who were not able to afford that time. And so it's been really an amazing community to be part of.
Two things I want to comment on. One, how appropriate for this topic that the lathe room is right above us and someone is turning right now. So if you hear that sound, that's what that is. The second thing, I don't want to derail and jump ahead, but I want to ask you, Sandy, in your current model, are you also members based? Like Rebekah just said, their shop is set up. Is it membership based?
So basically, you sign up for a 6-month lease. And I modeled this after the Charlestown Furniture Makers shop, which is, they've given me a lot of advice. But it's a 6-month, I think theirs is a year. I'm doing 6 month. There's kind of a 3-month get to know you period where you can both kind of see if you like it. And then from then on, it's signing every 6 months. And it's your basic lease. There's a whole list of rules you got to follow and all that. So.
Yeah, got it. Thanks. So many of us I can do this myself, types of people. Can you both share an example or a lesson that helped you understand what's realistic to take on yourself versus when it makes more sense to hire help, whether in terms of budget or your own physical capacity?
Yeah, I'm very guilty of this.
Of trying to do everything yourself?
Yeah, my wife would laugh at this question. One example is I had to get all of my machinery, which was in a storage unit, to my shop, which was 2 towns over. And these machines, some of them are 1,200 pounds. I should have hired somebody, but I didn't. I said,
Sandy, there are people that do this for a living.
They're called riggers. So you hire a rigger, and they move it. But I was, I can do this myself. I want to save some money. And so I really did all this pretty much myself. I had to get everything onto pallets, onto a truck with a lift gate, over to my shop, off the truck, off the pallets, and into the spaces. I was very lucky. I didn't hurt myself. And I didn't damage any machinery. There's a photo I have of a 1,200-pound joiner who, it's owned by somebody who's in this room right now. His name's Jamie Pope. He's right over there. And it's like leaning, it's like hanging from a chain from the ceiling and leaning like this. Didn't fall over, but it's totally fine. But that was a lesson. I really should have hired somebody. There's other things too. I've always thought that I could design a website on my own. How hard could that be? It's hard. You can do a basic one, which I did for the shop. But if you really want visibility, you need a good website. You need social media presence. That's a lot of work. You know.
It's hard, and it's time that you're better
Exactly.
use in
Yeah.
another area.
So you do have to balance. You have to juggle all that. What do I want to shop off to somebody else, or what do I want to do? What can I do? What's worth it? You know, there's a lot of things like that you learn along the way.
Mm-hmm. What about you?
So for me, I think about the word friction, and basically I look at, you know, is this a task or job that if I don't know anything about, or I have a limited amount, there's only so much YouTube University I can go to, because in the end, I'm probably going to do it more slowly, and I'm probably not going to execute it very well. So Liz and I will figure out, you know, sometimes it's just worth paying someone who's going to come in and do that, because that is their expertise. Do we have a budget to specifically think about that item in the bigger picture of budgets? Probably not. So things do come up as surprises, but that's sort of how I look at it, is what's the friction for us.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. In a cooperative setup, which I'm just using that word as a term that, you know, it's a multi-person space, there's often a balance between managing the technical aspects of the shop, maintaining relationships with tenants, and sustaining your own creative practice. Was that balance a surprise to each of you, and how have you approached managing those different responsibilities?
I'm happy to take that one first.
Sure, go ahead.
So this actually is one of the hardest things for me. My personality is very linear, so I think, ooh, this is what I'm going to do today. And then if that's my work, meaning my personal artwork or binding, and all of a sudden something comes up and someone said, you know, they knock on my cubicle or whatever, my bench, I really need some help with whatever this is. You sort of feel like, well, they're paying to be a member here, so I need to pivot and I need to do that. So having done this for a little while, we're now, or at least I've been able to start carving out times on the calendar. We have a Google Calendar, which lets people know when a workshop is taking place, or when a visiting artist is coming, or when a project is happening. It's also a chance for Liz and I to be able to say, we're not going to be at the studio. Or I can say, I'm going to be on such and such screen printing table. And that is my cue and everyone else's cue to realize, okay, I have these hours that are specifically dedicated to me, but to do my work. But generally, if I haven't dedicated that, it's the balance of, okay, let's see what I can do for an hour, you know, work away at it. And then also figure out what needs to be done for whatever is coming up. So that's it. It's taken many years. And also quickly, when we expanded, we brought on Megan Casella, who is now our studio manager. And with the expansion of the workshops and all the studio members, and speaking to, you know, websites and our newsletter and our social media, she has assisted us in that. So some of the mundane tasks that Liz and I did from 2018 to 2023, we now could unload to her. And she now even has a studio member who's picking up some of the other admin. So we have started to have some growing pains and figure out that we need physical human help.
Yeah. It seems like a bit of a catch-22 that you you're hungry to open up a shop space so that you can work your craft, but it's most financially viable if you have other people in the space.
Yes.
And it must be a really weird division of time.
You're running two businesses at once, and
Yeah.
like I find that something's always getting neglected. It's either your business or it's the shop, and I've found that it's best, like with the wood shop, find somebody who is handy with the machinery, cut them a deal on rent each month. Say, can you please do this? Like, keep an eye on these machines. You're out there every day. Just farm off as much as you can. But it's tough. I mean, I don't have a huge shop. I don't know how many members you have, but
30 plus.
okay. So yeah, I can keep track of at least the individuals in my shop because there are not a lot of them. I mean, right now there are not a lot, but at the most I would have maybe 5 people in there. So like maintaining those relationships would not be hard for me, but somebody with 20 people in there, that's a lot harder to keep track of everyone. And you know, I guess the other issue that I have is that like if there's a leak in the roof, I'm the landlord. So I can't just call somebody and say, can you please have this fixed? I've got to go deal with that. So those things come up all the time with an old building. You'll lose an entire day doing that. And you can't plan for that.
Another derail. I forget, when I first visited your shop, you were dealing with removing some substance off the floor. What was the factory that was there before?
So interesting building. So this is in Weymouth. It was a manufacturing company that was a 3rd generation company when I found the building. They were retiring. Their grandfather had started it. And they were manufacturing conveyor belts for the tobacco industry. Wow. Which is a weird thing to find in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
The grandfather who started it actually loved being separated from the business down south. He didn't want to deal with everything down there. He would fly down, they would take him out to dinner, and he would fly home, and that was it. But what I found interesting is when I got into this building, like I said, it needed a lot of renovations, and the floor was black. I don't know if it was painted black or if it was just black from 50 years of use. So one of the decisions that I made early on was to have the floor sanded. So turns out they're these beautiful maple hardwood floors. However, pretty much throughout the entire 6,000 square feet that you have these floors, there are cut marks all along it, like just small, thin cut marks, thousands of them. And it's because they used to roll out these huge rolls of conveyor belt material and just cut on the floor. And so those will be there forever. Couldn't sand through them. And then there's 2 other machines that are just enormous cast iron machines that they use. They're vulcanizing presses. They used to press the material together just to join it. And there's no way I'm ever getting those out of there. Those are part of the building at this point. So remnants of an old industry, but it's pretty cool.
That's wild. Back to the relationship piece of it. On the side of the relationships in being a landlord or a leader of a space like this, what's one of the most challenging situations you've encountered with a shopmate or tenant, and how did you handle it? And I want to know the real bad stuff. Give us some good.
I mean, luckily nothing too bad has happened in my shop. I did have a situation where a tenant borrowed a piece of plywood. I mean, he didn't borrow it; he used it. Of somebody else's, didn't tell him. That's a no-no in a shop. And it was, I had to mediate that issue. I had to go back into the rules in the tenant agreement and reword things just to make it very clear. That's stuff like that's going to happen. You have a shop that has everyone's tools and wood is just out in the open. I mean, things like that are going to happen. I can envision moving forward, I could have somebody in there who's a mess, who doesn't clean up after himself or herself. That's going to happen. Somebody who's unsafe on machines. That's another big problem. These are things you'd find in any shop like that. So. Did
you anticipate going into this that you would have to discipline adults in a shop environment?
I had heard some stories, so I knew. And to be honest, I am an introvert. Confrontation with anybody is not my thing. I do not want to deal with that stuff, but I have to.
Yeah. Cost of doing business.
Yeah, exactly.
What about you, Rebekah?
Well, I'm an introvert too, so...
and you have many more tenants.
Yes, and basically, what we try to do is to address things from a community point of view. So if we find that someone is doing something, we don't necessarily want to target that individual because potentially it is something that speaks to a bigger issue. And so we may send out an email or we may convene a meeting and we'll have Zoom and everything so that everybody can attend if they're not on site that day and try to address the issue at that point. We have had situations where, some equipment hasn't been used properly and, it is part of the business of doing business. And we realize, okay, that individual should not be given free rein, and it has taught us to be more conscientious on really parsing out when someone says they know how to do something, really making sure people know how to use our piece of equipment, even if they know how to use it in their own, another place. So.
Let's get into equipment then. The side of the shop that, and I say this from maybe a naive perspective because I'm not a person who's working on machinery, but I think of it as the side of the shop that no one really loves to spend time in, maintenance and repairs of your equipment. How do you realistically budget time for troubleshooting and keeping your equipment running?
I can tell you how I should do it. I should have a maintenance program for every single piece of machinery that's listed, and this is when it's been done. I haven't gotten to that yet.
Do you have it in your mind? Like, oh, this was 2020.
Yeah, I mean, some machines are like, that thing just runs fine. I don't have to do anything to it, until it breaks.
Right.
I have a lot of old machinery. I do have redundancy on the machines that are used most often. So if a planer breaks, there's another one. But here's a story about a planer. I have an old Powermatic planer that last winter started making a terrible noise, and we kept using it, but at some point I was like, we have to stop this. And so I contacted Powermatic. I showed them the video of it. They said, you got to replace the bearings in the cutter head to take the whole assembly apart. So I knew that was going to be a day lost. So we took it apart. It's we had a table laid out with 30, 40 parts, the gearbox, the cutter head, everything. Replaced the bearings, but noticed that 2 gears were damaged in the gearbox. So it made sense that while it was all open, we should just replace those too, because it was such a hassle to get everything off. So I go on Powermatic. Luckily with Powermatic, you can still find parts. I found the 2 gears. One I ordered, the other one was back ordered, but it said 5 to 7 days. I was like, all right, well, this machine's down for a week, at least. So a week later, no part. I called. They said, it just says 5 to 7 days from the factory. That's all I can tell you. A month later, no part. So at that point, we said, all right, well, let's just put it back together and hope it lasts. It's been 4 months and I still don't have the part. So those things you just can't account for. They're going to happen, especially when you have older equipment. And I'm lucky it was the Powermatic where I could get the parts. If it was something else, maybe I couldn't.
And also, just not to get into the moment that we're in right now, but you're dealing with even more challenges of getting parts that you need, whether it's
and I think that's the issue with this particular part. Yeah. Wherever it's made at that factory is, at capacity or doesn't have any employees. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And I have the advantage of most of my equipment is cast iron and it's human powered, so it's more about sharpening blades and fine tuning. I've actually taken advantage of people here at North Bennett in bookbinding and having somebody fine tune our board shear. We also have a shop tech program, which is usually people who are coming out of art programs or North Bennett, who can have access to the studio by trading us some work hours. So in essence, those individuals will be the eyes and potentially ears on anything that needs to be looked at and dealt with on a regular basis. So whether we have actual lists of things that need to be looked at, they usually are posted at those machines. We have power washers, and things like that for screen printing. But in general, we're very fortunate not to have to worry about a lot of parts and such.
Yeah.
Yeah, I lean on people. I lean on people here at North Bennett a lot. Jamie and Matt, guys who really know machines, have been very helpful. Bob Miller over in Charlestown, another guy who just knows every machine. So it's really great to have a network of people you can, and there's always YouTube. I wouldn't have been able to get that cutter head off without YouTube. Mm-hmm. There's no way.
Yeah.
The manual doesn't say how to do it. I just couldn't have done it.
Yeah. On cast iron machines, true story. I was recently at a shop in upstate New York that is kind of like the top of the top piano hammer manufacturer, and long history, like 60, 70 years, family business, sold to a graduate, a new owner. They relocated all of these heavy non-mechanical cast iron machines after 60, 70 years being in a static space. And one thing was tweaked enough to, destroy a whole, collection of piano hammers just by the adhesion was not on in one space. And so cast iron too, still can, by moving things. And I bring this up because if someone is starting a shop, you're going to be purchasing and moving equipment. And there's often an expectation that you can move a machine, power it on, and it's good to go, but that's rarely the case. So that's the next question, is how do you plan for and navigate that gap between expectation and reality when setting up a shop?
Well, that's definitely something that when we were looking at expanding the space to include the book arts and the paper making and such, I did, talk with Jeff, and I talked with a couple of other people in other binderies, in the Boston area. So when it came time to bring equipment in, I basically had people set up to fine tune and calibrate anything. And I think that's something that you have to expect, just because you're right, if it does shift. And as much as I love the riggers that we have used, they're big shout out to Gentle Giant, excuse me, because they've moved all of our presses many, many times.
Sandy's writing there.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Gentle Giant, no, they're awesome. But putting something back, if the paint is chipped around where you're screwing something back in, and that nut and cast iron bolt goes a little further, then you potentially have skewed your blade, and you need to know how to shim it back into trueness. And so I'm kind of dealing with that right now.
Oh my gosh. And then that's what I'm talking about, though, the time that takes to find that it's that little piece of paint that sent the whole thing off course.
Right. Yes.
That's wild.
Yes.
Oh, and you're saying yes because you're dealing with that right
yes.
now, and
yes.
we don't want to talk about
Yeah, yes. Well, but at the same time, what I do appreciate about, like, right now it's sort of being couched as that's a negative, but I also think that through that process, I'm learning more about that piece of equipment, and I feel that has value, and people shouldn't lose sight of this is all part of being the craftsperson and artisan that you are, because you're only as good at, well, no, that's not true, but your tools aid you in being the better craftsperson. And I appreciate knowing how something works, because then I can anticipate, I should not do that on that piece of equipment because it'll skew its squareness or do something. So it's a teacher for me, and I appreciate what my equipment is teaching me.
That's
Definitely.
Great.
I agree with that. I left North Bennett Street with the mindset that I wanted to buy only older American and Canadian-made machinery. Things like Northfield. I was like, I'm going to buy all my Northfield stuff. I couldn't afford it new, so I had to buy it old. So here's a quick story. I found a Northfield planer for sale. I needed a planer. It was on Craigslist. It was in Long Island, and I should have passed on that one, but I was new in this whole thing, and I said, I'll just drive to Rhode Island and get it. So I looked at the photos, I talked to the guy, everything looked fine, it was cheap. I drove down there, drove to Connecticut, drove onto the ferry, drove off the ferry, drove to the guy's house, and I'm looking at this planer that clearly had been sitting out in a barn, an open barn, for way too long. Totally rusted. I just didn't see it in the photos. I don't know. I wasn't going to drive away. I had just driven 4 hours. I was like, I'm bringing this thing home. So I got the price down a little bit. I brought it back. I spent hours cleaning that thing up, getting it tuned up, replacing the blades. I talked to Northfield about the process of cleaning it, They were very supportive because they're still around, which is nice. And then I got it fired up. It worked. But I started cutting boards. I was like, this thing is terrible. Like, why is it doing this? It's all this tear out and everything. So I called Northville back, and they said, oh, yeah, that machine, that's really only good for softwoods.
Oh, gee.
And I was like, oh, no. 90% of what I do is hardwood. I said, all right, well, can I upgrade the cutter head? He's like, I wouldn't try that. So, lesson learned there. Craigslist is really tough. You just never know what's actually going to be there when you show up.
Yeah.
No matter what the person says on the phone or what the photos look like. So like now I have a driving radius. Mm-hmm. Unless it's something I really, really want, it's a driving radius. I'm not going to drive farther than that.
And would you say that, part of the lesson learned was like your appetite to get this thing going was bigger than sort of the
100%. I was like, I need that now.
Yeah.
And, it's similar to anything you're buying. If it's a house, a building, a piece of machinery, when you start saying, I need that, you're going to miss other things that you really should be thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't need that. You cannot get attached to these things. There's going to be another one for sale a week later that you just don't know about yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People arrive at opening a shop space through very different circumstances: access to property, partnerships, taking on a superintendent role, or finding space outside major metropolitan areas where it's just more affordable. Given your experience, what have you learned about gaining access to and securing a workable shop space?
I could take this. So here's a little story of my process of finding this building. As I said, it took me a while to find the space. I originally was looking on the South Shore. Most of the rental spaces were what I would call flex space, which is basically like just a concrete block building all in a row. You'll see them in industrial parks. No natural light, just fluorescent lighting, no windows. And I was like, I don't really want that. So I was a little bit picky about where I was looking. I had this vision when I left here, like I'm gonna find a brick, old mill building on a river with tons of windows and hardwood floors. All of those have been turned into condos in my area. Like they just don't exist. There are other parts of the country where you can find that stuff, but not where I live. And I remember at some point I was buying I think a spindle sander. Actually, Jamie was with me. We were in a shop, I forget where, and the guy said, if I had to do this all over again, I would buy. He said, I would not rent. He said, if you can do it, you should buy. He said, renting, you are at the mercy of a landlord who any day could call up and say, I'm sorry, but you're out. I'm selling the building. And, that might work for some businesses, but not woodworking. I mean, like I said, it's thousands of dollars to move a machinery. And it's a lot of stress. So, I realize not everybody can do that. But at that point I switched. I was like, I'm gonna try to find something I can buy. And it ended up what I could buy was something that was pretty run down and needed a lot of work. But I was happy with that choice. But there's a lot of issues that go into buying property, commercial property. Zoning. I mean, I didn't know anything about zoning. I didn't know that was an issue. But you can't just open a manufacturing shop. They're calling, I'm a manufacturer.
Because you build furniture, because there's multiple tenants.
Because they build furniture. Because they build furniture. They didn't ask me anything about how many people were in there. They just said, what do you do? I make furniture. Oh, you're a manufacturer. I guess. And so that's all, it's different every town you go to. Zoning laws are different. So in one town it could be this, and another town it could be this.
Right.
And you're very limited as to where you can buy for that reason because of zoning. And then there's fire code. There's all sorts of other things.
Did you have to change that status, or was the building? I mean, the building didn't already.
Well, that's what I got lucky because they considered it already it was manufacturing.
Right.
They considered it manufacturing, so I did not have to. Once I found that building, I was fine. The town was like, you don't need to come. Otherwise, I would have to go in front of them, make my case. They could have said no. Mm-hmm. And when it's so difficult when you're buying. This is where renting would be a lot easier for this purpose, but when you're buying, you don't know that decision until you get in there. Like, you can put an offer down, and then you do your due diligence, and that's when you have to figure out, can I actually put a wood shop in here? Is the town going to allow this? If you're trying to put an offer down, there's 5 other people bidding on the building, you don't have time to do that.
That's right.
So it's really tough. I found zoning to be very difficult.
What came first then in that moment? Were you like, no, I got to have this building, and then I'll just figure out what I'm going to produce?
Yeah, I eventually did that. At that point, I was desperate.
Yeah.
And I loved the building. I fell in love with it right away.
Yeah,
I was like,
it's very cool.
I have to have this.
I love that you shared the zoning piece though, because that's the non-romantic piece of anything. Is all of those logistics that will make you crazy, but are kind of law.
Yeah, I can speak to that too, because originally Liz and I had planned to purchase a building, and we wanted to be close to public transportation. So everything that we were being shown were churches. So we were going to have to change use, and after purchasing is when you go through the zoning processes. And we realized it was just too risky, and the amount of changeovers that we were going to have to financially pay for to make it a studio it just became absurd. So we are unfortunately at the mercy of our landlord, and we're in a section of Newton that is being rampantly developed. I don't, we don't know what our future is after 3 years. What we did do, and I would advise this for anybody who thinks that they are stuck with not knowing what's happening developmentally wise, and if their building is going to be sold, is make sure you get a minimum of a year's development clause in it. And then that way you're not out on 3 months, because as you say, it's thousands of dollars to move equipment. So that's my caveat for today.
That's good. Also, just you say that zone, if you are in a position to buy a place, and then you have to jump on it and go through all of the zoning, like you're also accounting for all of that time of lost revenue,
right,
because you can't produce anything during that time. So it's...
And Liz had pre-existing members, and she had equipment that had to be out by, I don't know, what was it, September 1. And so we became a business in July. And so there was no time to, do any of that due diligence. So it really, made things crystal clear for us. We had to move fast.
Questions about the workshop and tenant or membership-based model. This is a two-part question for you, Sandy, because you mentioned visiting multi-tenant shops when you were a student here, actually, because you were so hungry to get into this space. Had you seen things in other shops that you knew that you didn't, that you wanted to eliminate or do something really different in your space?
Sure, yeah. One thing I wanted to do differently that I did not see in other shops was I wanted to have at least some space in my shop to run a small business. And so that was having office space. So I have a shared office space that's a pretty good sized room, has a kitchenette, has a little lounge area, it has desks, so that if you wanted to run a small business, you could. I'm on my computer all the time I do all my drafting for design and stuff on a computer. Like, I just didn't want to be sitting at my bench doing that.
It's a clean room.
Yeah, it's a clean room. It's a space to get away from the noise, and that was important to me. I remember talking to the guy who owns a very much larger member shop down in Philadelphia, and he thought that idea was absolutely crazy.
Why?
He's like, it's a waste of space. He's like, you could have 5 other tenants in there. How do you feel now?
Do you agree now?
Good question. No, I do agree. I think it's great. I mean, I can explain this, like, kind of the next question was talking about some of the stuff, but well, here's the thing. Here's what I did not know about this business is insurance. Insurance is an issue. And I did not know that. Getting, for a woodworker at least, getting insured for your own business is very difficult. Trying to insure a shop with a bunch of independent woodworkers in it is even more difficult. So I talked to my insurance company and they were like, we're not gonna do that. And so David Ambler at Charlestown was nice enough to direct me to who he gets insurance from, and they were able to help me out. But one of the clauses in that policy is that everyone who works there has to have their own commercial liability insurance, which, you know, for somebody doing this as a part-time or full-time basis makes sense. You should have it anyways. But for somebody who's just coming in on the weekends or at nights to make a table for their, you know, their child or something, that's not going to make much sense for you. Maybe you don't want to pay all that money. So it really limits the people who rent from me to people who are really treating this as a business. And so the shared office space does actually work. Mm-hmm. It's good to have. I'm glad I have it. The guy I talked to in Philadelphia doesn't have that. Mm-hmm. He has members who just come in for an hour every week or whatever. They don't need office space. Yeah. So I get that he didn't understand that part of it.
I see that office space as being, maybe this is long term, maybe just enough time hasn't passed, but it's additive to the workshop space, because even if you had another tenant who was an architect or a designer, I can see the two being very fruitful for one another.
Definitely. And if I ever want to sell this building, it's set up for any other business to roll in there, small
mm-hmm.
business. Makes sense. And they have office space.
Yeah.
They have a manufacturing floor. It's perfect. So.
Yeah. I want to talk about the evolution or rethinking of the shop model, this sort of, and you both have different types of models. Some are cooperatives where everybody has ownership in a space, tenant-based, membership-based. Is this still a viable foundation right now in 2026? Have you explored alternative ways to sustain or monetize your spaces?
So we offer workshops, which definitely helps us create also an audience to then potentially become future members. And our membership opportunities are everything from people who actually rent benches and little studios to people who rent time. And when we brought in the book arts component, paper making, and I forgot to mention earlier, we've also started risography. So bookbinding, book arts, paper making, and Riso have a different membership formula. I basically stole from the Center for the Book Arts. You pay a member fee that then, which is an annual fee that then allows you to purchase hours. So if you purchase more hours, it's actually less per hour fee. And you then can come in on our business hours, which are usually Monday through Friday, 10 to 4. Certain equipment, unless there's a shop monitor, shop tech available, you're not allowed to use. So even if a book arts member is a full member, that person wouldn't be able to use the equipment because we do have, insurance issues with certain pieces of equipment. Mm-hmm. So that's, so it's the workshops that help us really try to get more people.
What about your field?
Yeah, I'll admit I misjudged the market a bit on the South Shore. I get 3 calls, emails a week, people looking for classes. For either their kids, for themselves, for their family members to give us gifts. And I did not set that shop up to be a teaching shop. I would have done it differently had I known that. I still may do this in the future, but that's something I really should have, offered from the start and designed the shop such that I could teach better with it.
Mm-hmm. And is that partially because you're anywhere outside of this metropolitan area, you're going to have more footprint in your home, therefore you have a shop at home. So is there
a lot of people have home shops, yeah.
Yeah.
They do, which you wouldn't get here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's something that I would, maybe that's the next step is I find somebody else, another building to kind of set up that way. But there's definitely a demand for it, for sure.
Yeah. Before we open up for questions from our virtual audience and folks in the room, I want to ask you a last question from me. For students who are about to graduate, what do you wish they understood about the realities of building and sustaining a shop space? You mentioned insurance, but just asking the question again.
I think one of the important things is to actually go and see other shops in the area that you're going to be in. So if you're going to stay in the Boston area, I would say go and visit, come visit my shop, go visit, Three Ring Bindery in Somerville, go visit Colin Urbina in Seaport. See how they've set themselves up and what, things that they've had to struggle with, because that will potentially give you something to hold on to figure out what it is that you want for yourself. At the same time, if there's a place where you can go and rent for a period of time so you can look at what the market actually is going to be in your geographic region, it also lets you, without having that big capital expense of understanding, you're just paying rent, but you're also getting the advantage of having access to equipment and potentially purchasing power because you're buying materials from that collective. It also gives you potentially an instant community. I mean, that's one thing that as printmakers and bookbinders, we come through our educational systems as community-based groups. So we really rely on each other. And, one of the things that our shop does is every day at lunch, at noon, we stop for lunch and gather together.
In the parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I would say you can be so excited to be chomping at the bit to, make the plunge. But if time is on your side, I would definitely consider a year to look at your opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. Ask as many questions, talk to as many people as possible, go to as many shops as you can, join a shop, all those things. I mean, stay in this network. North Bennett Street's network is amazing.
Yes.
If you have the time to do it.
Yeah.
I had a home shop when I was looking for this bigger building. It was small, but I was able to do stuff in there. So I was able to work in there while I was doing this. Some people might not have that luxury to have that, but just take it all in. It's daunting. At least in my case, I was given a 3,000 square foot floor space to put my machines. Where do I put these machines? How do I do this? I don't even know how many machines I'm going to have yet. And don't get me started on the dust control. First of all, I had no idea how expensive that stuff was. The
ductwork.
The ductwork,
Yeah.
crazy. And where do I put it? I don't know if I'm going to have a machine there or not, or if I want to move it. You can pay extra, which is what I ended up doing for the stuff that just comes apart and goes back together. It's not riveted together, but that's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
All those things, you need help with that stuff. You're going to need help with that stuff, and you're going to want to get help for some of those things.
Yeah.
And just having that network is so great. I've leaned on people here a lot.
Yeah, same.
Before we throw in some questions from this space, I want to share some notes from Matt Romick, who's a graduate who opened up a home shop, and they're just really, really juicy bits. Things that he learned setting up his home shop. Learn the flow of a shop where your planer joiner, that. He said that was crucial.
Yeah.
Mistakes. Clue into the scale of what you can handle on your own, the sheer physicality of, this
Check.
from moving, check. Working with large objects. Learning that after coming through this community, which is so tight-knit and supportive and nurturing, learning that working solo is not as ideal as hoped. Being drawn to craft as a solitary practice, many people are. Turns out working with others is much more enjoyable for some folks.
Mm-hmm.
Agree.
Lighting was an afterthought until he realized how crucial it was.
Yes, lighting, yes.
And then the last thing he said was staying flexible with layout and setup, which, again, is not that simple when it comes to heavy machinery, but maybe as you're ideating your space is be a little bit nimble.
definitely.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
thought those were great points. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I'm an introvert. I'm fine being by myself all the time, but there's a limit. And
Yeah.
I don't want you probably all think like, oh, this guy's a downer. Like he's just complaining about all these things. I love walking into my shop each day. I absolutely love it. I look at it as I look at a piece of furniture that I've just made. Like I take pride in it. I love the whole concept. There are so many benefits to a collaborative shop, and we didn't really get into them, but there's so many. And I would
Share them. What
I mean, there's not a day goes by that I don't bounce an idea off somebody else. I don't I don't look at what else somebody else is doing. I don't. It is so like there's certain things I cannot do by myself. I need another set of hands. If I'm in my home shop by myself, I'm calling up my dad to come over,
Right.
who's 83 and can't do it. Having an extra set of hands, you can scale up. You can get a project that normally you would not be able to do. Say it's a month-long project. You can scale up for a month and then scale back down. You can say to somebody else in the shop, can you help me for a month? We'll split it, whatever, figure out the cost. That you can't do by yourself very easily. The one thing that the shop works really well at, one of the things that works is we get calls all the time for commissions. I don't know how they find me because I have not spent enough time on marketing. I do a website, but we get calls all the time. Can you do this? Can you make this? And I always envision that's how it would work, is that a call would come in and then you would just put it out, who wants this? And that actually happens. It's really nice.
That's great. A question from someone in our virtual audience. Rebekah, you mentioned a lot of demand for classes, and maybe this also relates to your format now, your formula, Sandy. Do you also see customer demand for general business advice or entrepreneurial assistance in these creative, craft-based fields? Maybe another additional.
Maybe that's a pivot. Well, actually, Liz has actually assisted a person who needed help. Actually, it was the second person. So she's twice helped someone design a printmaking studio, speaking to how to set things up. She was given the drawings, and Liz basically put up the workflow situation. So that has happened. Obviously, it's not the first thing that comes to mind, but we are open to people wanting to ask us questions. We're available via email and such. So
or just having your space used as another revenue stream of the entrepreneurial piece, having people come in giving lessons or talks or classes on that, not so much the shop piece, but I think that's
that is interesting.
I need to be better at finding other crafts people like myself in the South Shore, and they don't need to be woodworkers, but just getting together and talking about what we're all doing and the issues we're having. I need to do a better job of that because there's so much information from other people who are just going through the same thing, just in a different field.
Is your space fixed as it is, or could you in some realm pivot to being a more bring in other trades and crafts and practices?
they're actually the purchase of the property came with a small building next door that is just gutted and has no electricity, nothing. It's just a shell, and I haven't been able to do anything with it yet. But
pottery studio.
We thought why not a welder? Metalwork for
Welding.
furniture, something that goes along with the furniture. So there is a little bit of space to do that, but not within my building right now.
Right.
I want to keep that just woodworking.
Anybody have questions from this space? Mark?
Yeah, how was it then looking for a space and then maybe working with OSHA, because everything's become very difficult in the last few years. You're going to have a cert for almost everything. You had mentioned rigging, and you need to have a cert for that. You had mentioned hoisting stuff. You have to have a license for that. There's a lot of stuff now, and to be able to carry these employees in your staff, how was that?
So technically, I don't have any employees, so that kind of gets rid of a lot of that stuff. I'm these aren't my employees, these are just tenants, which is, I'm very clear about that. Like, you're not even allowed to have employees in my shop. So someone can't have somebody working for them in my shop. It's just single people. I don't want to get into all of that stuff, worrying about somebody else getting hurt. I mean, there's enough worry as it is. Having an apprentice in there or something, that would be hard. And my insurance company wouldn't let me do that. But yeah, there's a lot of issues like that. I mean, I have a room separate, but it's full of flammable materials. I worry about that stuff all the time. It's all to fire code, but like all those little things, those are concerns. I mean, OSHA's not going to show up at my door. They're not going to, because I don't see why they would. But
well, I guess because you don't have employees, so you're not.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah.
You're not responsible for other. Well, I don't want to speak to what OSHA really goes after, but.
Yeah, maybe I just put a target on my back.
Yes.
So each shop would carry their own private insurance, or how would that go for your building?
Yeah, so each tenant would have their own commercial liability insurance. And like, you would think that because they're signing a lease that's very clear about whose fault it is if you get hurt, that would be enough, but it's not. And any attorney will tell you that, and any insurance company will tell you that it's not enough. And so, in the end, I'm more protected as an owner, so that's better. But it has changed my business model, for sure. From, my original target audience is different than, what it is now.
And are you responsible for helping build up the space to the spec of the tenant, or,
No, so
fire code parts of it?
It's basically, I don't know if you've been in any of these shops, but they're often like, you have private bench space. So it's one area where you can put a bench. And within
not a closed off room.
Yeah, it's not, at least in my space, it's not a closed off
Yeah.
room. And you can build out that how you want to some extent. If you want to put stuff on the wall, shelves and things like that, you can do that. But the shop, the office, the finish room, that's all, you can't touch that. Unless we all talk about it and everyone agrees, yeah, we should put something over there, So there's really not a lot of build out that goes on.
A tenant's basically showing up with their hand tools.
Yeah, they're supposed to show up with a bench and their tools, and they have storage for smaller stuff. If you festal and all that, you can show up and put that. There's a storage space for that. Keep your own tools at your bench, and then you have full use of the machine room.
And don't touch anybody's plywood.
Yeah, exactly.
The one thing that I have wrestled with back and forth is, do I get a paint booth and a finishing booth, a spray booth? And I did originally think that was going to happen, and I've priced it out, and I've gone back and forth, and at this point I've been in so many shops, I've decided not to do it. They are a complete mess, and there's just no way to contain that. You can contain that within a room, but even then, it's just not something I want to deal with, and so I've decided against that. So we mostly do hand finishing stuff in our shop, and if you need spraying, you just ship it off somewhere else.
One more question from Emma.
I'm sorry if I missed this at the beginning, but as much as you're comfortable, where did you get the money to start? Like, were you relying on your own savings or your own income at the time, or were you applying for loans, or were you, if you're looking at nonprofit status, were you looking at grants? Like, how did you build up to what you needed to get started?
I can tell you it's difficult for that. I mean, you try to get a loan, and they're like, well, we want to see 2 years of your revenue.
Yeah.
We want to see your books for 2 years. And you're like, well, I just got out of school. How am I supposed to? Like, it's hard. It's difficult stuff. And if you're buying a place and then you're not going to be able to move in there for a year because it's getting renovated, there's no easy answer to that.
Partnership, cooperative. Like, I'm just listing all the other ways to go into sort of.
We talked about like starting a nonprofit. Like, what did you find the downfall of that was? I know you didn't do it, but
Right. Well, the downfall is you're required to have a board, and you may fill it with people who and supposedly are not going to kick you out, but potentially they could say sayonara, and you've just lost your baby. But also, you then are speaking to other people and looking at the issues that, well, we think you should be doing these kind of workshops. And so Liz and I, we call ourselves benevolent dictators. So, and speaking to the money issue, I had a parent who had passed away. So I was looking at being able to use some inheritance to take care of that. Not the answer that a lot of people want to hear, but
Yeah, I mean,
that's reality.
I kind of went that same route too, because I went to the banks and they were like, this is what we need to see, and it wasn't going to happen. And then COVID hit, and like after that, and it never would have happened if I had waited. So like I did what I did at the time, and it was the right move. Looking back, but it's hard for, especially
hard.
you come out of here and you're like, I've got nothing. I'm just starting this business. It's tough.
Outside of the metro, so those are the other things that we listed off earlier, where find a partner or several, do a cooperative environment where everybody is staking in, go way out of the metropolitan area. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean that's where things are affordable.
Yeah.
Get away from here as far as possible.
And be prepared to do a tremendous amount of work on the property.
Yeah, and that's what I ended up doing, is just buying something that was run down, which, I won't get into working, my contractor was a disaster.
Save that for another
That was
talk.
that's another problem.
Yeah, one more question, David.
Is there a price versus profit margin that you guys try to stick to on your space rentals?
Yeah, I mean, I've had to drop some things down because it wasn't getting anybody signing up. It's expensive.
Percentage-wise, like,
Oh, I mean, I'm not sure about percentage-wise. I mean, I can tell you $600 a month is what it costs to come in. You get full access. And I've thought about doing like, $300 a month, and you only come in nights, like trying to figure out something different. But I don't know where the sweet spot is. I think $600 is pretty cheap considering what you get for it and what you can do, and you can run a small business, and like you'll never have access to those machines at that cost anywhere else. You can't buy all those machines for clearly. So I think it's a good price, but there's certain people that they're like, no, it's too much, can't do it. So
Yeah. Okay, with that, we're going to end there. Thank you all so much for being with us. I just want to push the last in the making of this season is in 2 weeks. It's on pricing your goods and services. And I also want to plug Shepherd Maudsleigh is having open studios this weekend. You should definitely check it out.
Just Sunday.
Sunday, sorry.
That's
just
okay.
Sunday.
Thanks.
And thank you both so much for being with
you.
us, Sandy and Rebekah.
Thank
This
you.
has been really great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.